But first, within the hour, a panel of federal judges will hear an appeal from the Trump administration in a battle over deportation policies and the right to due process. Now, deportation flights to Venezuela started up again this weekend, with the White House claiming that they are booting gang members from this country. But now an appeals court will review President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to fast-track deportations without due process. The White House launched an appeal after federal judge James Boasberg issued a restraining order halting the use of that wartime law. President Trump continues to blast Judge Boasberg on social media. Meanwhile, Trump posted this weekend that he should be disbarred and compared him to the judge who presided over his New York fraud trial. Now, at the same time, Attorney General Pam Bondi says the case could go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
This is an out-of-control judge, a federal judge trying to control our entire foreign policy, and he cannot do it.
Okay, let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. Tom, thank you so much for spending the time with us. So what are you going to be looking for at today's hearing? What should we be watching for?
Oh, there's going to be a lot going on today and a lot to keep our eye on. I think probably the most important thing is simply to get a read on the three judges, the appeals judges who will be hearing the arguments today, as to whether or not they do agree with the Attorney General that Judge Boasberg has basically gotten too far out on his skis here, whether or not he is exercising judicial authority in kind of too aggressive a way, and whether or not they agree that the president has what he views as basically unfettered authority to remove these individuals from the United States without a hearing.
So, Tom, what happens next if the court sides with the White House and then blocks Boasberg's ruling?
Well, for one thing, I suspect that the challengers would try to get that case up into the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, it would give the president the authority to remove individuals, basically without limitation, under the Alien Enemies Act. That's the legal issue at the heart of this dispute concerning the president's constitutional authority to remove these individuals with a minimum of due process.
Now, the president has said he wants to have Judge Boasberg removed from the case entirely. Is that even possible? I mean, last week, 6 days ago, Chief Justice John Roberts said he rejects calls to impeach judges. Who's going to win this back and forth here?
I think it's possible he gets removed, but I would say exceedingly unlikely in my book. Judge Boasberg is the chief judge of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. I think that the judges that sit above him on the appeals court, by and large, view him as a straight shooter, as a rational actor. I haven't seen any evidence that suggests to me that these judges would be inclined to take Boasberg off the case. Whether or not they agree with his legal analysis is a different question. But as far as whether they're poised to knock him out of this case entirely, I really don't see that happening.
So looking kind of at this broader picture of this case here, Tom, is this going to test the White House's relationship with the Supreme Court, do you think?
It's going to be an early indicator of whether or not the Supreme Court, number one, wants to actually get involved in a lot of this. The Supreme Court doesn't have to hear every case that's offered up to it. So that will be one indicator. Do they even want to get involved here? And then if they do, the second question is whether or not they share President Trump's understanding of his constitutional powers as president. That is an issue that's going to be coming up again and again over the next 4 years. And this would be an early signal as to whether or not the justices of the United States Supreme Court share President Trump's broad understanding of his constitutional authority.
All right, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with this one. Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. Thank you so much, Tom, for being with us.